That'll make Mike happier, too. Call the Town Council special meeting of Monday, April 29th to order. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Peter Talbot,
Here.
Jim Jinks, Dina Allard, Patricia Kramer, Fiona Pearson, Don Walsh, Greg Wolf, David Veliver,
Here.
and John Mylone. Everyone's present.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have 3 items on our agenda tonight, the first of which is the adoption of the fiscal year 2024-25 general fund operating budget. Mr. Jinks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves resolution number 042924-1. Be resolved that Cheshire Town Council appropriates the following amounts for the Town of Cheshire General Fund operating budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. General Government, $39,964,367. Debt Service, $9,221,592. Contingency, $125,000. Capital Non-Recurring, $1.1 million. Be it resolved that the Cheshire Town Council appropriates the amount of $89,542,609 for the Board of Education budget. Be it further resolved that the sum of all revenues, transfers from other funds, and the allocation of general fund equity for the fiscal year 2024-2025 Town of Cheshire General Fund operating budget will be in the amount of $139,953,568. And be it further resolved that the tax rate be set at 27.46 mils, which will generate $107,828,680 at a collection rate of 99.2% for the fiscal year 2024-2025 for real and personal property and motor vehicles. And that the tax payments for motor vehicles and personal property shall be due and payable in one payment on July 1st, 2024. And the real estate tax payment shall be paid in 2 equal installments, with the first payment due on July 1st, 2024, and the second payment due on January 1st, 2025. And that pursuant to Section 12-144 of the Connecticut General Statutes as amended, that any real estate tax bill on the 2023 grand list in an amount not in excess of $100 shall be due and payable in a single installment on July 1st, 2024. And that pursuant to Sections 12-142 and 12-146 of the Connecticut General Statutes as amended, the last date for payment of taxes due July 1st, 2024 will be August 1st, 2024. Therefore, payment of taxes due July 1st, 2024, which are received after August 1st, 2024, will be assessed interest calculated from the original due date of July 1st, 2024. The last date for payment of taxes due January 1st, 2025 will be February 3rd, 2025. Payment of taxes due January 1st, 2025, which are received after February 3rd, 2025, will be assessed interest calculated from the due date of January 1st, 2025.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Thank you, Ms. Pearson. Mr. Jinks, discussion, please.
So, first of all, just want to thank Sean Arnett, Jim, Gina, all the department heads, Noel, and the entire town staff that are involved in creating the budget. In some ways, the budget is an ongoing year-round process, but preparing for the annual adoption of the next fiscal year's budget starts at the department level in December, if not earlier. Then all the department heads submit and advocate for their budget proposals with the town manager beginning in January, and the town manager in turn goes line by line adjusting department requests before submitting the town's proposed budget to the council in early March. The town manager's net reductions before submitting the budget to the council this year total over $831,000. From there, the council has a series of budget workshops where the department budget proposals are presented. As a council, over the last 6 weeks, we've spent over 25 hours in budget workshops and deliberations. We've all spent many more hours studying and preparing for these budget meetings. As a town council, budget oversight and input is our most important function. It's interesting that the word oversight means the action of overseeing something, but also the word oversight can mean to miss something. The long and short of it is that this process is that everyone on the town side, on the school side, the Board of Ed, and this council takes very seriously. We've questioned and challenged cost increases. We've looked under every rock and every corner of this budget for savings. I can assure the public we haven't missed anything. We've also made some hard but necessary choices, as that is our job. The town manager's submitted budget was a 5.97% increase over fiscal year '24. Based on the initial budget request, the average taxpayer with an average home and 2 average vehicles would have seen a property tax increase of nearly $700 for the year. After the Board of Ed approved the superintendent's budget, following their own review and modest reductions, the town council sought additional reductions to their budget request. The superintendent provided further net reductions that totaled $725,000, an amount very similar to education budget reductions in recent years. While this reduction likely means the schools will not be able to hire additional teaching staff in the sciences, it is a reduction that allows for our school system to maintain their current level of service while managing rapid increases in our student population. On the town side, we also made additional net reductions of over $220,000. We're applying the remainder of the Biden administration's American Rescue Plan funds of $800,000 toward the school's higher medical costs. We're increasing our use of fund balance this year to begin to reduce our debt service, meaning we're at least moderately reducing the eventual impact of the higher debt coming from the 2 new schools. We're maintaining the capital non-recurring budget at an above average $1.1 million. This allows us to pay for some lower cost capital items like police cruisers in cash now rather than stretching those payments over 20 years, which would artificially increase those capital costs for taxpayers. We also made some conservative adjustments to town revenues, examples being the park and rec fees, permit fees, town clerk fees, etc., and modestly reduced the projected monthly medical cost on the town side. These are all typical levers that past councils have utilized to close the gap and reduce the mill rate while funding town services. Cheshire is a thriving and growing community. We've seen significant residential and commercial development over the past 2 to 3 years. And more is in the pipeline. In response, over the past year on the town side, we've added some key positions to keep up with the higher demands for service, but these additional staff are largely paid for with increasing building permit fees. The town is also adding 1 full-time position, 1 part-time position at Arts Place, but these will largely be funded by expanding Arts Place hours and class offerings. This budget is also adding a parks maintainer position to help with the additional work coming online with the new Bartlett Park South property, a park property upgrade the voters overwhelmingly supported at referendum. Ultimately, this budget is a maintenance budget. We're maintaining the services that Cheshire residents expect and demand, such as good schools, public safety, parks and recreation, senior center programs, a great library, counseling services for our youth and older residents, and a beautiful, well-run town. We also reduced the initial budget request from an initial budget request increase from 5.97 down to 4.67, a smaller budget increase than recent years. For the average taxpayer, this reduction represents nearly a 45% decrease, meaning about $304, from the initially projected annual property tax increase. We have one of the lowest mill rates in the state, and we have very good schools and excellent town services. Cheshire is a very safe community with a high quality of life. In short, we are an unbeatable value, and our financial outlook remains strong, as evidenced by yet again earning the highest possible credit rating this year. Over the past 10 years, the average mill rate increase has been about 0.75 mils. Last year, the increase was 0.77 mils. This year, the reevaluation adjusted mill rate increase is about the reevaluation adjusted mill rate increase is above average, but it's not due to a big increase in town staff or an increase in town services or quote-unquote wasteful spending, as some like to say. Just as every year, among the largest cost drivers in this budget are annual wage increases and health benefit cost increases. Our tax dollars largely go for paying for the people that help to make this a great town. Police officers, teachers, public works staff, mental health professionals, park and rec staff, etc. One of the biggest reasons for the above-average increase to the mill rate this year is an echo of post-COVID economic effects. As we all know, there was major supply chain disruptions, and these disruptions artificially drove up the value of automobiles like everything else. But this year, those artificially higher automobile values came down significantly, meaning the tax revenue generated by the motor vehicle tax on the cars and trucks we all own will decline sharply. Motor vehicle tax revenue will decline by nearly $2 million. This is also the first budget after reevaluation last year. Residential property values went up far more than commercial property value, and personal property values declined by over $700,000. Meaning, coupled with the decline in motor vehicle values, we started with a revenue hole of about $2.7 million. This is one reason I'm supportive of the commercial development in the North End and why I'm supportive of more development in our industrial zones. The worsening imbalance between residential and commercial property values is really hurting our taxpayers. These facts explain why the mill rate is increasing this year more than the average of the past decade. It's not because the Democrats are in charge or because we don't care, though I'm sure plenty, even though those who know better, will make this argument to score some cheap political points. That would be a shame. It would be discounting all the work that our town manager, town department heads and staff, the work of our school superintendent, the staff, the BOE, and not to mention all the work this council has put forth to arrive at a budget that merely keeps us with our town's growth, nearly keeps up with our town's growth and maintains the service levels our residents deserve. I'm voting in favor of this budget because I believe it appropriately balances all the needs of our community while doing everything we can reasonably do to limit the mill rate increase. And finally, thanking my colleagues for your hard work, your ideas, your patience, your diligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Mr. Mylone.
Thanks, Peter. So before I let you know where I stand on this year's budget, I'd like to make a few comments. First, I also want to thank Sean, Arnett, Jim Jascott, and of course Noel for the excellent work in the preparation of this year's budget. As usual, it's comprehensive, very easy to understand. Their work makes our job much easier. I would also like to thank our department heads for their input in this process. One of the most satisfying aspects of being on the council for me has been to see firsthand how capable each of our department heads are and how committed they are to the effective execution of the services that they are responsible for, and also how they consider the financial impact of their individual budget requests on our community, residents and businesses. I believe that they are very careful on how they spend our taxpayers' money. They clearly approach their work from a culture of service to the community. And of course, that always begins at the top, and for that I compliment Sean for his leadership. I also believe as a council, it's our responsibility to always promote a culture of giving back and service to the community. I would also like to thank our educational system leaders, Jeff Solon and Vin Massiano, for their excellent work overseeing our public school system, including our school facilities. We are fortunate to have such a well-managed and highly regarded educational system, which greatly benefits the entire community. It is no secret that I did feel there was an opportunity to reduce the dramatic increase in our Board of Education budget this year, and I pressed both Jeff and Vin in this area. I am disappointed we did not find more opportunity for financial relief there, but I do appreciate their very thoughtful and timely responses to the questions that were raised. As we discussed, I'm hopeful that next year they can look to provide year-to-year line item comparisons so that we can more effectively review the Board of Education budget in view of other increases expected, particularly as we incorporate more of the debt for the new school buildings. I've been through 2 budget cycles with the council where I sat with the majority, and Peter and Jim represented the minority. I assume they did not achieve all of their objectives during those previous budget deliberations, but they did find an ability to support the budget. I now find myself in a similar position. As I've already stated, I would like to have seen some further expense reductions, particularly from the Board of Education, but that was not supported by the majority of the council. I do believe the work we did cooperatively in making some adjustments to the original recommended budgets, which enabled the reduction in the originally proposed mill rate by almost 1 mil, and also reduced the projected tax burden for an average taxpayer by over 50%. Therefore, in the spirit of compromise and bipartisanship, I do intend to support this budget. I do want to say, however, that I was very disappointed to see a social media post by one of our council members suggesting that past councils had not done their job, implying that the burden of increased taxes was inappropriately put on the shoulders of this council. That simply is not true. That type of partisan rhetoric is unhealthy and, in my opinion, totally inappropriate. The development of budget is a give and take, and I believe we all work to find compromise that will not impact the quality of services to our residents and businesses. My hope is that this council will continue to work together and do what is in the best interest of the community, will foster a spirit of cooperation rather than focus on advancing a political agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mylone. Mr. Veliber.
Thank you. It's going to work your way down. It's awesome. I, too, would like to thank all who helped make this budget process possible. Sean, Arnett, Jim, all your staff who do this, Dr. Solon, Vin Massiana. Everyone does a great job bringing thought and to the process and helping make this budget process go smoothly with different requests and different thoughts, and you know, some of them they're all great ideas. Hopefully we can try to work all of them into the process. I appreciate the budget process that we went through. This is my 7th time going through it, and I appreciate the collaborative nature of how it's been this year. This was a difficult situation with a budget caused by revaluation, not by past council budgets. The budget has lots of reserve and is using up lots of reserve and ARPA funds. I do have some concerns about that in the fiscal cliffs, but we will deal with those as we go forward. That number, with those, we were able to reduce the potential tax increase to still a number of $392 for the average taxpayer. It's a better number, but still equals a huge tax increase in real dollars for most, especially for residential homeowners. As I said, the last 3 budgets have been much lower, and last year was $167. This new amount is 2.5 times that. Although the extent of the increases is partially caused by factors outside of our control, for example, revaluation and loss of revenue, this increase will represent a significant burden on all taxpayers, especially residential homeowners, and more especially on our seniors and those on fixed income. I had suggested some additional cuts of about $500,000 to the Board of Education budget because I think we needed to try to get to a lower number. It's not because I don't want the Board of Education to be great or our education system to be great. I think it is great. I have 4 kids in the system, and I have total faith that they and all Cheshire students are getting a great education. The simple reason is because we need to rein in spending and spend at a reasonable level for all residents. This is especially important knowing what is coming next year. This budget doesn't even really start to feel the impact of the debt service going to schools or the lack of funds that will be coming from the state or not coming from the state. To have such a huge increase now will be a difficult burden for our taxpayers, especially when they're going to be faced with probably even a larger burden next year. I've changed my focus on the original reduction to the Board of Education budget. I still think that we could save about $500,000 on this budget, conservatively reducing that burden on the Board of Education to probably reducing their budget by about $200,000. And I think we could still take more fund surplus balance conservatively based on what we're going to be bringing in for the end of the year. I realize it's probably too late to bring those up now, but I just thought I would at least refocus the energy on the fact that I think that there was still about $500,000 we could go, since surplus will exceed the amount that we're going to be bringing in for this year, and it's time, it's nice to give it back to the taxpayers in the year in which it was taken. So someone said, well, what's $500,000? $500,000 reduction would still equal about a $40 per household reduction in taxes. I know it's not a lot, but it's still a 10% reduction in the total proposed increase. That will be something that even, all residents can feel and will be helpful to them and will not, I don't believe, have a significant impact on the overall budget or the services that Cheshire can provide. It may only be a drop in the bucket, but every drop counts when trying to bail out taxpayers. For that reason, I think that this budget is still too high and poses too big a burden on Cheshire residential homeowners. With that, I will be voting no for this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to echo their sentiments about thanking Sean and Jim and your staff, thanking Dr. Solon and Vin for all their hard work, and the Board of Education for taking the time to go through the budgets and do the best they can. Trying to create a budget is not an easy process. I'm sure a lot of the newer people have realized that by now. It's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of stuff that we're not used to dealing with, and it's a lot of stuff that is new to us. So I appreciate the time that our staff has taken to show us ways where we can save and ways where we can reduce our spending. I want our taxpayers also to understand that I take our fiduciary responsibilities very seriously and would never make suggested reductions that I feel would negatively impact the way this town would operate or how our children would get educated. I understand that every dollar we take away will affect something, but these are difficult decisions we must make to make sure we are doing what we were elected for. I want to address a comment I saw as well from a fellow council member, saying that this budget process was a difficult task because we were catching up with decades of spending neglect is just totally wrong in my opinion. Working on the budget should be a collaborative effort, and I felt that we were being collaborative, and one that we as taxpayers ourselves needs to take very seriously and not let politics get in the way. We are in the midst of the largest building project this town has ever seen, 2 brand new schools. This process began when I started on the council over 4 years ago. We are now completing an $8 million park. We built new pickleball courts and lights, and we'll probably be adding new ones. We've done many new improvements to Mixville Park. Our schools are top in the state, and all of our property values have increased dramatically. People want to move here. Businesses want to come here thanks to the TIF district the past councils approved. This does not happen if there was spending neglect. So tell me, how much more should we have spent over the past decades and burdened our taxpayers with? Would Cheshire be the same desirable place that people and businesses would want to come to? We just can't spend for the sake of spending. In all the budgets I was part of, which were passed unanimously, we used strategic spending to make this town as great as it is. The real problem this year, as our town manager and finance director have stated, was the loss in revenue for the motor vehicle and personal property taxes. This accounted for about $3.5 million in lost revenue, and that's a tough nut to make up. It would have been easy to just pass along the recommendations from our department heads and Board of Education without questioning anything, but we wouldn't be doing our jobs. We were elected to help run this town efficiently and prudently while keeping the amenities that we are all accustomed to. Our education system is top-notch, giving our students the best education they can receive. We also must keep this town affordable for all, whether it is the young professionals, the families, the empty nesters, the seniors, or our businesses. Every dollar we add to the budget costs us all more in our taxes, and we must remember that we have a number of residents in this town who now live on fixed incomes. Do I think we could have brought the mill rate lower? Yes, I do. One place I know where we could have saved a lot of money was moving our health district to Southington. Besides the lower per capita rate, we could have received a percentage of the $1.3 million currently in their fund balance. Unfortunately, this council voted to stay with our current health district at a higher rate, and where the fund balance will now be used to fit out their new office and to offset losses from next year's budget. I also feel we could have asked for an additional $500,000 from the education budget. Based on the past several years, we know there will probably be more than just 6 retirements. And knowing that our Board of Education would have worked together to determine how to use the $89 million they would be receiving. $89 million they will be receiving, which is double what they received 24 years ago, I should say. I'm excited to see our grant list continue to grow, especially these past few years. I'm even more excited to see the future growth, which is extremely important to our future budgets. But we also have to be extremely careful. The next few budgets will see large increases to our debt service because of the new schools. These are schools that the town voted on, so we have no other option but to pass these costs along to our taxpayers. The North End commercial development will not be on our tax books for 2 years. I'm challenging our town manager, his department heads, our superintendent of schools, and our budget chair to begin working on ways to limit the increases next year by finding places to save or other streams of revenue. It will be an extremely difficult one if we don't. I do feel we have worked hard to bring down the budget from what the town manager originally delivered to us. And I understand the reassessments along with the drop in the motor vehicle values was a major factor. But because of those reasons, I will support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Pearson?
Thank you, Chair. I would first like to thank our many municipal leaders for sharing with us the amazing work being done in our town. I have learned so much during this process, and it is heartening to know that we have such dedicated leaders, municipal employees providing necessary and mutually beneficial services in our community. We understand it was no easy task and that much thought went into putting these budgets together. I also want to express my sincere appreciation to all my fellow town's councilors for conscientiously listening to hours upon hours, 25 hours, is that what you said, Jim? Presentations. And for asking important questions whenever increases or amendments were proposed. I thank our town manager for finding additional sources of revenue and line items where we could tighten our belt. I challenge any town councilor to identify lines they believe to be unnecessary. I could find none that would not significantly and negatively diminish the level of services our town residents expect. I further express my appreciation to every one of the members of the Board of Education who similarly, carefully vetted each line item in the Board of Education budget and offered well-informed and thoughtful reductions in order to ensure that we continue to provide an excellent education to our children in Cheshire. My own children have long graduated from our schools, but I fully understand the incredible shared value of a strong schooling system in our community. Finally, I thank the many town residents, including many Cheshire High School students who showed up late on a weeknight, sharing their knowledge and understanding of issues that are important in our schools and public parks. We heard you, and I believe every one of us up here agrees that what you shared is valuable to our community, and this proposed budget will address your needs. With this budget, we are ending up with a total percentage increase of 5.23%, which is lower than the 5.93% increase that the Town Council approved last year. We have ensured that important services are not diminished. We have also been able to secure a significantly lower mill rate for 2025, down to 27.46 from 35.09. Reducing the mill rate by over 7.5 points is necessary to address the significantly higher taxes that residents will see as a result of their property increasing in value. Most residents are grateful that our homes have increased in value in recent years. This increase in value will benefit us all in the future. But the future is not now, and as stewards of the town, we on the Town Council are fully aware that we have to mitigate the effects of such increased property valuations due to the corresponding increase in taxes that all of us will have to pay in the years to come, for reasons that my fellow town councilors have already pointed out. And I must disagree. To that point, we are only now beginning to pay for the past chronic disinvestment in our schooling infrastructure that our fiscally conservative town council has put off for over 4 decades. We are also catching up with underinvestment in town services. In 2016, the budget increase was 1.73%, and in 2017, it was less than 1% at 0.77. Such low increases do not in any way keep up with ensuring adequate living wages, much less address inflation. How can we expect to maintain our schools, parks, libraries, youth services, senior services, public works, teachers, counselors, nurses, firefighters, and police officers when we disinvest in those services? I believe that my fellow town councilors who have served in previous budget years have come to realize that fact, which is why they last year voted to support a % budget increase that was even higher than the % budget increase that I will be voting in support of tonight. We can no longer pretend there aren't very real consequences when we choose not to support our municipal services. Voters in this town recognize this fact, which is why they overwhelmingly voted in support of finally investing in our schooling infrastructure, even though they knew it would significantly increase their taxes. Those voters acknowledge that we have disinvested for far too long and now are paying the price. All that said, we understand that paying for decades of disinvestment is painful, which is why I'm proud that we on Town Council in January of this year once again voted to increase the tax relief income threshold for veterans and elderly and disabled homeowners and renters. In these tight times, we must protect our most vulnerable residents, and so we must continue to support and potentially expand those tax relief programs. I am saddened that the current budget will not likely accommodate the superintendent's request for 2 new STEM teachers for our 4th and 5th grade students. If savings will be considered, if savings from school retirements do emerge, I do hope those line items for new science teachers will be considered by the superintendent and the Board of Education. In sum, I appreciate the diligent work that goes into this process, and I thank all those involved as we were faced with difficult choices that led to making difficult decisions. Would I prefer an even lower mill rate? Of course. But I also know that I and my fellow town councilors ask questions about every single line item increase. This budget is lean. There is no excess. Even in the school budget, there is no excess. But even more importantly, we are not unconsciously passing on costs to future generations, as has been the tradition on this town council in decades past. As stated earlier, even my Democratic and Republican counterparts in recent years have come to realize this fact, as is revealed in the bipartisan truth that they indeed passed an even higher budget increase last year. We are listening to our voters, to the residents of this town, who understand the need to keep up with inflation, keep up with livable wages, keep up with basic services, and keep up with investing in our schooling infrastructure. I am hoping that this year, like last year, we will again come together as a bipartisan vote of support for a responsible budget. Unlike decades past, we can no longer afford to put off our present-day costs onto future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson. Ms. Allard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak up so all of the people in the back row can hear me. Yeah, you're good, okay. First, I'd like to thank our town manager, Sean Kimball, Arnett Noel, town staff, as well as Dr. Solon and the members of the BOE for their time and effort in providing thorough presentations of the many services provided to our community. This town has so much to offer, from great parks and recreation opportunities, public works and public safety, incredibly comprehensive library and human services, and of course, an excellent public school system, just to name a few. These are the things that make Cheshire such a great place to live. It's why so many who grew up here choose to stay, and why people like me choose to move to Cheshire to raise their families. Comparatively, this year's budget is lean. Even though state and federal pandemic assistance is drying up, this year's budget increases at a lower rate than last year, from 5.93% last year compared to a lower 5.23% increase this year. We still have an attractive mill rate, lower than surrounding towns, which is now 7.5 points lower than it was, from 35.9 mils down to 27.46 mils. And our high-performing schools operate at a per-pupil cost that is well below the state average. Out of 166 Connecticut school districts ranked from highest to lowest, Cheshire's per-pupil spending is ranked at 109th. These are facts. High quality and affordable price. That's called value. However, I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. In spite of these facts, these amount The amount of taxes paid by the average household with 2 average cars will increase by approximately $400. As a newcomer to this council, I've listened closely during the budget deliberation process and have learned a lot. I want to thank my fellow council members for their questions and comments. Your input has helped me to understand this process a little better. I can say to the community with absolute certainty that every member of this council wants to keep your tax burden as low as possible. After all, these decisions affect all of us as well. And speaking personally, like many others out here in Cheshire, I need to keep my bills low too. The truth is, we all would have felt more comfortable with less taxes. Mr. Veliber, you pushed hard for the Board of Ed to come down to a lower number, and I believe your intentions were good. I truly do. But I don't know if I'm the only person on the council in this situation. I am speaking to you now not as a peer, because I live in your district. I live in District 1. And so as my district representative, I wanted for you to hear me, so that way you can better understand how to represent people like me in your district. I did not choose Cheshire because it's cheap. If paying the lowest price was my main priority, I would have purchased a home in any one of our surrounding towns. I chose this town because the services that Cheshire provides to my precious family come at the best value for the money that I spend. Now again, I do appreciate your intent. I believe that it was from a good place, I do. But slashing the requested budget amount from the BOE simply to lower the tax burden is very short-sighted in my opinion. Because in spite of your best efforts, there were no suggestions provided by anyone, including yourself, on how to go about getting to that lower Board of Ed number without sacrificing the services that you and I both count on as parents of school-age children. And I just know that we all want the same thing here, lower tax bills. But I also wholeheartedly believe that we both believe in investing in our children's future. If you and I can trust the Board of Ed with our children, then I believe we can trust the Board of Ed with our dollar. So I ask that you keep that in mind when you're making decisions as my representative. Mr. Walsh, I want to thank you because at the last meeting you said something that really kind of resonated with me as a new person. This was kind of a whirlwind, quite the learning experience. But last meeting, when we all realized that we had tightened the belt as much as we could and we were left with a $400 tax increase, you said, and I quote, we knew this was going to happen, and this is it. I mean, I was hoping it would happen next year, but this is it. And I thought to myself, he's absolutely right. The people of Cheshire make their values known with each referendum, and things like expanding parks, buying fire trucks, building schools were all approved by voters in the last few years. They also don't live here because it's the cheapest place to live. The people of Cheshire value the services provided by our community and see our tax dollars as a worthy investment because they are. So Don, I wanted to thank you for giving me that light bulb moment. That was really insightful. And I would just like to make one request of everyone on the council. It seems as though social media seems to be a problem. Recently, it came to my attention as well that one of my colleagues posted, and not inaccurately, that this is a significant increase that will impact our senior citizens. However, what was failed to be mentioned was that this council unanimously voted back in January to increase senior citizen and veteran wage threshold amounts for tax breaks because we do care about our senior citizens as much as our families with school-age children. This change directly increases the amount of senior citizens who may qualify for tax relief. Our neighbors deserve for their elected officials to communicate with transparency and honesty and to fight for what's in their best interest, not our own. So as we address their questions and concerns about this budget outcome, can we all remember to work together as a team with our Can we all remember that we did work together as a team with our competent town manager and Board of Ed? This was the best outcome. Now specifically to our residents, all of you here in the audience and those at home. I would like to mention that if you think that you qualify or someone you know may qualify for a senior citizen or veteran tax relief, please visit the Cheshire Tax Assessor website for more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to commend the Budget Committee and Chairman Jinks, the Town Manager's Office, Sean, Arnett, and Noel, all the department heads, Jim, and the finance team on guiding us through this year's budget process. And to my fellow council members, I appreciate all of your insights, solutions, and debate. I will be supporting the budget we will be voting on this evening. I feel it represents compromise, frugality, and creativity while supporting all of the exceptional town staff and providing the best in-state amenities and town services. Cheshire is a premium town. Our library, our first responders, our human services, our public works, our open spaces, and our trails are all best in the state. I am not a numbers guy by nature, but I do know people, and I know the quality of the people who keep Cheshire's standards high. This budget is about people as well as delivering exceptional services to Cheshire. Raising taxes is not what I want to do, and I'm confident in saying that no one else in this room wants to raise taxes either. But I realize that to maintain our premium standards in Cheshire, we all need to contribute more. Increasing taxes in town will be a challenge for me, as it will be for fellow taxpayers. I understand the burden that raising taxes causes. Cheshire will be dealing with many tough financial challenges in the coming few years. Progress and growth cost money. Modern infrastructure is not cheap, but it's imperative. Paying a living wage with reliable cost of increases to staff is a responsibility, and new schools are expensive. We as a town take on these obligations and must find ways to pay for them. Some have suggested providing less funding for departments to ease the tax burden on our town. This will come at the cost of our citizens. People will lose needed and expected services. Students will not have access to programs that will be critical to their advancement. People make this town great, and we have made obligations to them. Cheshire should be proud to fulfill all those obligations. That said, we must continue to find ways to be more efficient. We should work to find ways to ease the tax burdens for those who are in need, or those who are willing to serve their community. There are always ways we can improve and be better together as a town. I hope to work with my fellow town council members, town staff, and our citizens to do the work and improve on our magnificent community and ease the burden on all taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Ms. Kramer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, fellow council members. Thank you to town leaders, Sean, Board of Ed, Dr. Solon. Being new to the town council, this is my first town council budget process, and I just want to thank everybody for putting up with the huge learning curve and the questions that were asked and answered, and even more so for the questions that weren't asked but were still answered. I've been watching everybody during this process, speaking up when I had questions and trying to keep away from political sound bites and talking points, because Cheshire deserves better than that. When faced with probably about a 5-inch pile of paper of numbers about a month and a half ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, we started page by page, line by line, trying to understand where our tax money goes, where my tax money goes. And I did move here for the schools, and I know that taxpayers pay for the schools. I didn't move here for the mill rate. When I moved here, I didn't even know what a mill rate was. That's been part of this learning process. Knowing how it can be increased and decreased depending on the services that the departments need to fund. We sat through hours and hours of presentations of our amazing services that are provided to Cheshire citizens, and it was eye-opening. I knew some of the services that were provided, but some that are important I had no idea existed because I didn't use them, but I'm still happy to pay for them every year. That brings us to a shared commitment to Cheshire. tonight we're voting to increase our taxes. And I was saying quite comically to my husband, I'm off to go vote to raise my own taxes. And it's not something I ever thought I would do. But I feel so strongly for Cheshire and the way that it's run. We asked for reductions in proposed budgets, and we were given back budgets that were reduced, I think twice. We lost some services. I know we lost a German teacher. I know we're not getting a lower grade STEM program, which is unfortunate, and maybe we can find room moving forward in the budget for it. But I'm Cheshire proud. The services that we provide everybody in town by the sacrifice of taxes is worth it for me. And I know moving forward, the town is it's getting bigger. There's more development. There's beautification projects going on all over town. Everywhere you look, there's a building going up. And I know we won't see that tax revenue this year, maybe not even next year. But I know it's on its way. I also learned through this budget process that although the revenue comes in from the development, oftentimes it's spent on the increase in services that development requires. So moving forward, I am honored to be voting to pass this budget, to keep funding Cheshire's strength and growth. And it's a commitment that we're making to everyone in the community. I wanted to highlight again the tax relief services that are available for seniors, the disabled, and veterans. Even if you think you might not be eligible, it's worth looking into. It's something that might be able to help ease your burden. $400 a year for the average taxpayer is a lot of money. And I wish it could be lower, and we tried to get it as low as possible without truly sacrificing services that we've become accustomed to. Thank you, everybody, for entrusting us with this vote, and I hope that we use it to represent you. And I want to make note that Peter and Jim, being the minority on the council for so long and still voting for a budget because you knew no matter what kind of budget it was, nobody was padding their numbers, nobody was in it to take money unearned from the taxpayers. You still voted for it, and I appreciate your effort. And I hope, sitting on this side of the majority, I know that you have a healthy respect for our counterparts on the other side. Thank you guys for being there through the discussion, bringing in your perspectives of we could cut a little more. Don, your points on the car property taxes were very enlightening. Thank you for explaining that the way that you did and the way that it affected the budget. I do appreciate that. This is a huge learning curve. And I appreciate everybody's dedication, and here we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Which leaves me. I want to begin, as my colleagues have, by thanking several people. I will start with thanking Sean Kimball. Thank you. I want to thank Arnett Talbot, who, unless as a collective body we are able to change her mind, she is about to put the wraps on her final Cheshire Town budget. I'm still not convinced that we can't change her mind.
We'll come back next year to the podium.
I want to thank Jim Jascott, Gina DeFilio, Noelle Shepard, all the department heads and staff that work incredibly hard to put together this information for us. It should be noted that for as long as I've been a part of this process, the Government Finance Officers Association has presented Cheshire with its Distinguished Budget Presentation Award, an incredible accomplishment. I also want to thank Dr. Solon, Vin Massiana, the Board of Education, and the Cheshire Public School team for all their efforts. And finally, I want to thank my colleagues, and especially our Budget Chair, Jim Jenks, and Budget Committee members, Fiona Pearson and John Milone. This is the 13th budget for the town of Cheshire that I have been a part of. While the overall process has become easier, the magnitude of weighing expense cuts, setting mill rates, and maintaining service level does not get easier. If anything, it gets harder. This year was especially difficult because of several factors, the totality of which have never all happened in the same year. First, there was revaluation. The revaluation produced an average 40% increase in assessed home value. The mill rate was lowered to equalize the extra tax revenue. However, because commercial real estate did not increase at the same rate, there is automatically a shift and a greater burden placed on residential taxpayers as opposed to commercial taxpayers. Second, because of the drop in the mill rate, we are experiencing a $2.7 million combined loss in revenue from motor vehicle taxes and commercial personal property tax. Third, we are faced with a 24% spike in debt service from $7.6 million last year to $9.5 million this year. The debt service increase is a result of beginning to pay the bonds for voter-approved projects such as Bartlam Park South, the 2 new elementary schools, fire apparatus, and various school and infrastructure work. These deficits, totaling nearly $5 million, had to be dealt with before we even began to look at the increases requested by the Board of Education and general government. Keep in mind that on the town government side alone, over 1/3 of the increase is due to contractual obligations. We as a town council worked long and hard on this budget. On the town side, we had meetings with every department and went over every line item in the budget. With the education department, we had 3 meetings with Dr. Solon and Mr. Massiana. At the end of the day, we settled on a budget that is being voted on tonight. Are any of us happy with it? No. But I will vote in favor of this budget tonight. Town council members are elected to do a hard job, the hardest of which is approving a budget and setting a mill rate which determines taxes and the levels of service provided by our departments. We are volunteers who do this because we love this community and we want to do what's best for Cheshire. As mentioned, we are taxpayers. I am a retired senior citizen, although I hate to admit that, on a fixed income. I know exactly what people are going through, but we still have to make difficult decisions. We held 2 public comment sessions during this budget process. During those sessions, the overwhelming majority of the people that spoke asked for increased services. They asked us to fund education. They asked us to fund fencing as a varsity sport. And they asked for a pollinator garden at Mixville. Twice, Mr. Grippo from the Board of Education spoke and said he had ideas for cutting the education budget. Twice, I asked him to provide me with that information for us to consider, but I never received anything. As I said earlier, we are all volunteers trying to do what we think is right and what's best for Cheshire. It's okay to have a difference of opinion. That's healthy too. I again thank my colleagues for the numerous hours that they spent working on this process. And with that, I will call for a vote. All in favor of the resolution before us, please signify. All opposed? Motion passes 8-1. Mr. Veliber has opposed. That brings us to item 4 on the agenda, the adoption of the fiscal year 24-25 Water Pollution Control Department Fund Operating Budget. Mr. Jinks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and be it resolved that the Town Council approves resolution number 042924-2. Be it resolved that the Cheshire Town Council appropriates the sum of $5,081,691 for the Town of Cheshire Water Pollution Control Fund operating budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. And that the sum of revenues and allocation of Water Pollution Control Fund equity for the fiscal year 2024-2025 Town of Cheshire Water Pollution Control Fund operating budget also be in the amount of $5,081,691. And be it further resolved that the Cheshire Town Council recommends that the Water Pollution Control Authority consider setting the sewer use charge at $4.75 per year, effective December 1st, 2024.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Thank you, Ms. Pearson. Discussion, Mr. Jinks?
I don't have any discussion on this item.
Discussion from colleagues? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Brings us to item number 5, the adoption of the fiscal year 2024-25 Community Pool Fund operating budget. Mr. Jinks.
Be it resolved, the Town Council approves resolution number 042924-3. Be it resolved that Cheshire Town Council appropriates the sum of $1,207,253 for the Town of Cheshire Community Pool Fund operating budget for fiscal year 2024-25, and that the sum of revenues and transfers from other funds and allocation of community pool fund equity for the fiscal year 2024-25 Town of Cheshire Community Pool Fund operating budget also be in the amount of $1,207,253.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Thank you, Ms. Pearson. I'll open it up to any of my colleagues for discussion on this item. Mr. Walsh.
I just have one
Thank you, sir.
comment. I appreciate what John Golick and Sheila have been doing at the pool and seeing the increased revenue. And with the new splash pad, I'm hoping to see more increased revenue coming forward. I don't know if they've set a price for how much everything's going to cost or everything, but I know it's going to be a big attraction, and I'm just hoping we're moving closer and closer to being a self-sufficient pool like was promised 25 years ago. We're getting there, but I do appreciate all the hard work that John and Sheila have been putting into that.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously.